So, it's been a while since I've made a video, and as much as I want to make an excuse as to why I haven't, the main thing is simply because I didn't want to, or I didn't feel like wanting to make a video, and part of that mainly is because of work. Work has been putting me into the office every single day, basically, and has taken up a lot of my time. And it sucks when you wake up super early, come back super late, and then you have to dedicate some time going to the gym and then making dinner. That way, by the time you want to make a video or feel like you want to make a video, you only have maybe 30 minutes left to do what you would want to do before you end up having to go to bed, and then repeat the same thing every single day. And then you end up getting so burnt by the end of the week that you don't even feel like or have the energy to put yourself in front of the camera, which pretty much is what I've been feeling this entire time. There are other things too that have been in play, such as intermittent traveling that I have done in between then, and then the other major thing being changes to my equipment. So you might notice maybe a little bit that there's probably something different going on around right here. And the major thing is that I've got a brand new camera. So what I'm looking at right now is something completely independent from this. So I had been, well, before this, I had been using a webcam this entire time, well, the way back in the day. And then once I had figured out that I could use this as a webcam, well, before that, I was just recording videos on here, not knowing what I was looking at, and then hoping that it came out well, and then uploading it onto my computer, subsequently editing it. And then once I figured out that there was an app that I could use to take this, put it directly into my computer, and I don't have to do some circular crap, that ended up being my predominant camera. But it's my phone, so if there's anything going on or my phone gets too hot, well, guess what? Then you might start seeing some like artifacting, or the video might even just cut out completely and then I have to restart. So having this camera right in front of me makes things so much better. It'll constantly stay charged. It is completely independent. It doesn't need to have any external apps other than needing a capture card. And then I can just have it plugged in to the wall or my computer, so that way it can maintain charge and not really have to shut down or overheat or whatever. So it's great for needing to record when I'm ready to make videos again, which is going to happen, and when I go back into live streaming. So that way now I have this camera right here, that to where if I want to use my phone and I don't have to unplug it, or I don't have to shut it down, turn off the stream, so that way I can see if anybody's texting me or calling me. Like right now I'm getting a bunch of text messages. So I wouldn't have been able to see that if I had used my phone as a camera. So I'm very thankful. I wanted to get it for myself, but I ended up getting it as a Christmas present. I guess good things come to those who wait. And then the second major update that I have in terms of equipment is, if you're paying attention to the background of the scene, you might notice this big black square right here. Where's my hand? Right here. That is my old computer. And I say old because, granted, the age of everything inside of there is relatively old. It's about 7 years old. That thing has been with me for a long time. With my first major job that I had, my first actual job paid me freaking pennies, but my first major job where I was actually making good money, the first thing that I wanted to spend my money on was a really good computer, and it ended up being that. And that thing has been with me for a long time, from my early days in community college to actual college, to when I moved out of my parents and brought it with me. And even with some of the stuff that I've done here in this new place, I've done so much with that computer, and that did a lot of the processing for a lot of the videos I have done for this channel, but it is about time for it to retire. And part of the reason why is because I had a pretty nice windfall with some cash. Very lucky to where I was able to invest into brand new parts, fully updated, except for the graphics card. The graphics card is still my old 1080 Ti, but that thing's a freaking beast. But other than that, new processor, new motherboard, new RAM sticks, new M.2 SSDs instead of whatever else that I had in there. Streamlined the entire system, except for that piece of crap. I don't know if you can see. That was the brand new PSU that I bought, but that thing ended up becoming defunct because it was faulty. Barely lasted 3 weeks before it was killing my brand new computer. So the old power supply, which was a 2-year-old power supply, because the 7-year-old power supply, which what would have been a 7-year-old power supply, ended up giving out. That is now in this computer, so that way I can run everything, and it is a champ. I love it. It is so great. I get to be able to run this thing, use it for making new videos, rendering new videos, and even streaming when the future comes for that. I am super excited. I have brand new equipment that I get to use and encourages me to continue making new videos and going back into live streaming when the time comes. And then the last thing that I want to cover, because this is the major topic that I want to get into, is travel. So the last time that I did a video that involved some form of traveling was when I went to PAX. Pretty fun. I enjoyed it. I like traveling in general, and usually I try to cover whenever I have major travel events going on, but whenever there's like minor travel events, I don't really post it. But I do want to mention, because it did happen during this time, I did go to San Antonio during this brief down period. I love San Antonio. I think it's a very beautiful city. If you think otherwise, let me know down below, and if you agree with me, that's also cool too. Just let me know there. But I thought that was a great spot. I went with my now fiance, no longer my girlfriend, my now fiance. But the major thing, the main topic that I want to talk about today, because it was something that I wanted to do when I got back, but never had the time because I had to ramp up a lot of things at work. And then the holidays came. I took a trip with my fiance and my parents, the 4 of us together, to Armenia. Yeah, you heard me right. Armenia. Why Armenia? That is such a very interesting spot for an American. Well, at this point, if you don't really know, I don't think I've ever really mentioned it, but I am part Armenian. My fiance is Armenian. My dad's Armenian. So it's in the blood, right? I am not from there. I'm from California. I'm not from Glendale, as most people would probably think. But, I'm from California. My dad is not from Armenia. He is from Lebanon. And my fiance is from Armenia. So there's a lot of things that are going on in terms of, well, why wouldn't you end up going to Armenia? But to be honest, for me personally, it wasn't really at the top of my list. It was on my list of things to do in terms of travel. But as an American, it wasn't on that high caliber. I don't have family that live in Armenia. I barely even have family that live in either Lebanon or Syria. Most of them have come here to the United States. So there isn't really an encouragement. Whereas in terms of my fiance, she does have family there. And one of those family members in particular is her grandmother. And she wanted her grandmother to see me. And she wanted to visit her because it had been some time since she had seen her in person. So she asked me. Of course, I would say yes, I would like to go. Why would I not? And then she wanted my parents to come along too, because neither of them had been to Armenia, so why not join us? So here we are traveling to a country that I've never been to, that I don't speak the language of. My mom doesn't speak the language, and my dad speaks Western Armenian, whereas my fiance speaks Eastern Armenian. So there's going to be some slight differences between the two of them, but they're mutually intelligible at the end of the day. But before we even stepped foot on Armenia, we had a layover in Frankfurt, Germany. And typically, when you travel out into those parts of the world, you will more than likely end up at Frankfurt International. Why? Because for some reason, every single plane likes going there. It's a pretty major airport, but it's a central hub and most of Europe at that point, right? And when we were arriving, when heading to Armenia, we stopped off at Frankfurt, and we were there for approximately 9 hours. So I thought to myself, well, we're going to be in Frankfurt for 9 hours. Why don't we just explore the city? My parents have been to Frankfurt many a times whenever they would travel to Greece to go see family there, but they never stepped foot outside of the airport. Typically, you're not there for too long, like 2-3 hours at most, but you do see the occasional 8-9 hour just layovers, and that ended up happening to us. And the beauty of it is, when we had this 9-hour layover, it said that we were going to be arriving at 11 in the morning. So bright as day as it would be when we would land in the beautiful land of Germany, I was like, why don't we just leave the airport? And I did my research and found out that there is a train in the airport that takes you to town. So that way, when we're ready to come back, we just hop on the train and boom, we're already in the airport and we just head straight to our terminal. And that's what we did. I convinced everybody to go and explore the Germany. Why not? Get the stamp on the passport. And I thought it was worth it. Ending up in, and forgive me for my pronunciations, Rammersburg. Very beautiful spot. Very touristy. You see plenty of people there just walking around, many different shapes, sizes, colors, and whatnot, exploring this area. And you do see the occasional things that you would recognize here in the United States or pretty much any major part of the world. You got your H&Ms, you got your Starbucks, your McDonald's, whatnot. One day, I do want to explore more of Germany. I know Frankfurt is only just a small portion, and even then I was only in Frankfurt for just a couple of hours, but at least we got to see and step foot on the land of Germany and leave the airport and not just stay there for hours. Now, there are tons of great things that I want to say about Armenia, but this video, I don't want it to be too long, coming back to the swing of things after months. So I'm going to try and condense as much as I can and share as much of the experiences that I have with you about Armenia. So one of the major things that you'll see when you get here is that you will notice that the old Soviet-style building and architecture still exists in Armenia. They are trying to, what looks like, stray away from that, but it's kind of hard to move already existing architecture to something that's a bit more modernized, especially with the current climate that's going on between Armenia and Russia. But no politics involved in this conversation. This is mainly just, what does Armenia have to offer? What does it look like? And why I would probably want to go back, and why you should go and visit. So the main thing is the main city, the capital, Yerevan. What does it have to offer? Well, it has plenty, honestly. Many good shops, many good restaurants with plenty of great food options to give to you. You have plenty of meats and fish and bread everywhere when it comes to dining out in the city. And on top of that, you have coffee shops everywhere, tea shops everywhere. And if you don't feel like going to a coffee shop, you're just on the go, well, there's also plenty of coffee vendors. Sort of like how in Japan there are tons of these vending machines dotted all over the place. They have vending machines that strictly just give you coffee. And like very, very cheap, like 25-cent espressos. You go up, it pops up the cup, it fills it up for you. Boom, there you are. Here's your coffee. Have a nice day. On top of that, you're going to see tons and tons of architecture, tons and tons of statues dedicated to famous Armenians, mainly poets and playwrights and artists and engineers, political leaders, generals, dotted all across the capital city, and all funneling towards one of the major key areas of Yerevan, which is the Opera House, where we had the privilege to go inside. We got to see a play during that time. We even got to see it wasn't really a play, it was like a ballet. Let me correct myself there. And then we got to see an orchestra towards the later end of our stay, like pretty much the last day that we were there, but we got to see both sides of this opera house. Very beautiful building. The whole entire layout of that area is just amazing. And just a few blocks away from the opera house is the Cascade, which if you ever look up anything involving Armenia, you probably one of the first things that you're going to see picture-wise on Google is the Cascade. A big, long monument with a huge staircase climbing up towards this monument. We got to have the privilege to go up there, though we took the escalators because some of the party members that we have are on the older end and can't walk that, but still had the privilege to go up and see it. We got to see it during the day, and of course we went up it at night and got to see the nighttime view of Yerevan. And then right by it is Meir Hayastan, which is probably the other photo that you would see of Armenia, which is the statue of the woman with the sword in her hand. We didn't get the chance to go up to it, but we did have the privilege to actually see it in the distance and many of the roadways that lead to the central part of Yerevan. One of the other places that we had been to was the Matanadaran, which is a big museum, huge, with tons of manuscripts preserved across many different languages, from Greek to Latin to Ottoman Arabic, where it talks about or mentions anything involving Armenia, so that way it can preserve the written manuscripts of these old ancient texts that have reference to the land and its people. So that way it can be maintained across many different centuries, cultural differences amongst those within the region, to show, hey, we have our proof of our existence through these different manuscripts. And they have plenty of other things that are in there too, manuscripts of people talking, even in the modern days when it came to things like World War I, World War II, and even today's age with other leaders, political leaders who have their involvement with the country. But that's just the stuff to do in Yerevan. There's still plenty of things to do in Yerevan city. But another aspect to Armenia, obviously, is the stuff away from the capital. We couldn't travel too far, unfortunately, but we did make some pretty decent distance, heading a little bit north, a little bit east. And one of the immediate things that we went to was the Temple of Garni, which is a Greco-Roman style temple that has been preserved, has been reconstructed because it was pretty much crumbled, but they've maintained somewhere around 70%, probably more, of the pieces that exists of this temple, reconstructed it, and then remade some of the missing pieces so that way it could be reminiscent of what it had looked like back when it was first built. Very beautiful piece of something that existed during like the classical times that I don't recall exactly what it was dedicated to. Some god, possibly Armenian, possibly Greek, possibly Roman, whatever it may be. But it is a piece of that time period that exists to show that there were people groups in this era that were constructing these monuments similar to that you would find in Greece or even Italy or many different parts of the world. And Armenia was just another one of those areas where that influence managed to make its way and build itself upon there. And they've preserved the entire area so beautifully and made it into a very nice park. And then not too far from Garni was another famous church. And I say another famous church because almost all the churches in Armenia are famous. But this particular church, Gegart, right on the side of a mountain, constructed right at that base, still being built, or at least it looks like it's being fixed from some of the pictures that I have. Very serene, very beautiful, very calming. A lot of these churches are like that, and you're gonna see tons and tons of churches dotted throughout Armenia. One of the main things that they have are these old Christian churches, Armenia being considered to be the first nation to declare themselves to be Christians. Has a history of having these dotted all across their land and in the lands that they used to claim, and they're doing everything that they can to preserve them. They're doing everything they can to ensure that they are still operational. And a lot, when I say operational, a lot of these churches are still operational. They still hold masses. Even some of them had weddings. So another one of the churches that we ended up going to was Khor Virap, which is essentially where Christianity started in Armenia, right by the Masis and Ararat, the two major mountains that are iconic in Armenian culture, even though it is currently owned by Turkey, but they still revere it to this day. And tons of pictures that you'll see of Khor Virap with the two mountains right behind it. There were weddings going on when we were there, and this is a small church, so when I say weddings, what I mean is pretty much they had a 20-minute mass for their wedding. As soon as those people were out, you start hearing cars honking coming all the way down, so that way they could have the next set of couple to be married, and then they leave, and then another team just came, got them married, and just kept on rinsing and repeating the whole process. It was hilarious to see. Well, obviously, they still use a lot of these churches, and they're definitely using them to the fullest. And then the last major church that we really went to was Ejmiadzin, which in essence is the capital of churches in Armenia. Whole campus of churches that are in the area. Beautiful sight to see. Huge church. Very, oh my god, I can't even explain the holiness of this thing. I'm not too much of a religious person myself, but there is a level of respect that you have to have when entering a building like this and seeing the beauty that they offer to you and how they take art and religion and combine them together into something that is unremarkable. Words can't even explain. And then if you are like me, I do drink alcohol. As some people close into circles would know, one of the other things that we did was go to the Arat Brandy distillery. If you know anything about Arat Brandy, it is a fairly recognizable brand, an Armenian style cognac. It is fairly delicious, and having the privilege to go in there and do not only a tour, but a tasting of the different years of that they have, of what they can offer to you, was such a huge privilege. Being and experiencing the flavors that they have and the different levels of the aging. Oh my gosh. Like, I had to buy a bottle from there. Of course, I bought a bottle that they don't offer here in the United States, because why would I buy something that I could buy here? But hey, being able to go and experience the Arat distillery, such a beautiful thing. Going inside and seeing the history that they have to offer, how long they've been in operation, the people that have been involved in making or even just consuming the product, such as like Winston Churchill, for example, being a main buyer of the brand. I would have never guessed that it made that much of a difference in one of the highest offices available in the UK. And then finally, one of the last major things that we did while we were there was we took a trip for something that I asked for. I knew it was a bit hard to do, and I didn't want to impose on my fiance's family, because her cousin and her aunt and uncle were doing a lot of the driving, and I really have to thank all of them. This trip would not have been possible if it weren't for their involvement and everything that they've offered to us, from food to using their car to them being tour guides and taking their time out of their day to accommodate to us. I didn't expect them to go out of their way to, because it is a bit of a drive, was to go and look at Lake Sevan, the biggest lake in the entire Caucasus region, owned in Armenian lands. Very beautiful place to go. Granted, of course, this is November when we went, so it's probably not one of the best times to go, but I don't know when's the next time I'm going to Armenia, and I wanted to at least take some of that time to see some of the things that are in relative reach. Definitely a bit of a stretch, hours out of our time to get there, but being able to go to Sevan, touch the water, actually see the expanse of it, the Caucasus Mountains in the background, having some of the local fish in the area. Such a beautiful spot. I could only imagine what it looks like now. Probably covered in snow, probably cold as ice, might even be frozen over in some parts and people are ice skating. But when I went, the water was still there. I could touch it, I could see it, smell it. Honestly, so thankful that my fiance's aunt and uncle and her cousin did all this for us. It would not have been possible. And I'm so thankful that with everything that I have experienced and everything that I have allowed to, or managed to put onto my computer to show to you guys, that maybe it might even convince some of you to go. I don't know. It is a bit out of the way, but I honestly enjoyed my time while I was there. Now, that's not to say that it is absolutely perfect and a utopia. There are definitely some things that, to me, I didn't really like about the country. One of the major things, because I just have a heart like that, and it's a bit of a soft spot, is I'm not too keen about seeing tons of stray animals, in particular dogs and cats. And they are everywhere. That is one of the main things that you'll probably see when it comes to people who go to Armenia, is there are going to be dogs everywhere, there are going to be cats everywhere, and they are going to be tagged, and they are going to have some sort of measure to where they're properly fed. But you know, it's a bit hard for me when you see these dogs and cats that are in the same spots that you see that people interact with and pet, and play with and give food, but don't have a home. And around this time, where it's winter, the dead of winter, snowing, and over there, you know, it's significantly colder over there. They're way high up on the mountains. I'm pretty sure not a lot of those animals are going to survive that winter. And it makes me sad being a pet owner, having a cat here and having dogs back at my parents'. It was a bit rough to me. You do see also tons of scars from the past when it comes to the previous wars, when it comes to this previous times of it being a part of the Soviet Union, the typical stuff that you would think of when from places that are recovering from Soviet Union, like those old block style apartments with an abandoned Ferris wheel. Those definitely exist over there. But you're going to see lots of that, right? You're going to see a lot of dilapidated buildings. You're going to see a lot of abandoned areas. You're going to see a lot of people that are in essence like beggars. This is not a perfect place. But at no point did I not feel like I was out of place. Granted, part of that is probably because even my fiance's cousin said that I looked like a local, so maybe that's why I didn't have a hard time, because I didn't really see a lot of people outside of like Armenian passing peoples other than Chinese, but not really a lot of tourists. At least I didn't see any. That's just my own perspective. Maybe there were plenty and I just went at the wrong time. But yeah, Armenia is a very beautiful place. Does it have its faults? Of course it has its faults. Does it have its struggles? Of course it's struggling. But it has plenty of room to grow. And it is definitely growing. And it is growing at such a rate that the beauty that it has to share, the influence that it has to offer, everything from the arts to the sciences to the architecture, plenty of things that it could give to you and make you enjoy your time there. Honestly, a side note, probably one of the best Chinese places that I've been to is in Armenia. I'm so surprised that some of the food there in general was way better than some of the food that I've had here. I didn't get to try Mexican food in Armenia, but there definitely was a Mexican restaurant, and there was a mariachi band of nothing but Armenians dressed in red, Armenian red coloring our mariachi gear. So that was a bit off, granted being that's the other half of my side, but hey, I guess my mom got to have some representation while we were out there. Other than that though, Armenia, in a nutshell, struggling to grow, but definitely growing and breaking through those bonds, trying to make sure that it still comes out on top despite all the things that are happening to it. Very beautiful place. I loved it. Would I go back? Absolutely. I don't know when I would. Should you go? If you definitely want to experience a Christianized part of the world with plenty of architecture, plenty of art, plenty of food to give, and plenty of kind people that do speak English over there, a good majority of them do speak English there, then I think you should go. Other than that, if you don't feel like going, that's on you. But Armenia, super beautiful place. Definitely would go back. There's plenty of things that I didn't get to see that I would have wanted to see there. So I guess that does mean that I have to go back at some point, right? Either way, this is my video back into the world with my new gear, with my reasons why that I didn't post any other videos at some point. I am going to come up with a streaming schedule sometime in the future, probably towards the weekends. I've already talked about it with my fiance to see what time I'm going to allot to allow myself to play some games and utilize the equipment that I have. Other than that, that's pretty much it from me. Let me know down below, have you been to Armenia? What do you know about Armenia? Would you go to Armenia if you have not been? That's it. I'll catch all of you guys later. Peace.